20 black actors you didn't know turned down major movie roles that will shock you. What if we told you some of the most iconic movie roles in Hollywood history were almost played by someone else, and that a few of your favorite black stars turned them down? From billion-dollar blockbusters to Oscar-winning films, these shocking what-could-have-beens will leave you speechless. On Legends of Black Excellence, we're revealing the untold stories behind the roles that slipped away, and the powerful reasons why. Fire ready to find out who said no to The Matrix, Pulp Fiction, and Black Panther? Hit that like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because this is one video you don't want to miss. Lawrence Fishburne, 63 years old. Before The Matrix made him a sci-fi legend, Lawrence Fishburne was already a powerhouse on screen. But in the early 90s, he made a career decision that still surprises many to this day. Quentin Tarantino wanted Fishburne to portray the philosophical, gun-wielding Jules Winfield in Pulp Fiction, 1994, a role that eventually went to Samuel L. Jackson and became one of the most iconic in cinema history. Fishburne, however, turned it down, deliberately and unapologetically. In interviews, Fishburne has explained that his decision wasn't based on ego or scheduling conflicts. It was a matter of principle. Specifically, he was deeply troubled by the script's portrayal of heroin use. He objected to a pivotal scene in which Uma Thurman's character, Mia Wallace, overdoses and is revived by an adrenaline shot to the heart. Fishburne believed that Tarantino's treatment of drug use, particularly heroin, was too casual and dangerously cool. To him, that scene, and its impact on viewers, didn't sit right. His decision came at a time when the United States was still grappling with the devastating effects of drug epidemics, and Fishburne, conscious of his influence as a black actor, didn't want to endorse something that might glamorize addiction. He prioritized artistic integrity over potential accolades, a move that highlighted his long-standing commitment to portraying meaningful and responsible characters. Despite missing out on the role, Fishburne's career continued to ascend. Just 5 years later, he would take on the role of Morpheus in The Matrix, 1999, a part that catapulted him to global stardom and further cemented his status as a cultural icon. His portrayal of the wise, reality-bending mentor became synonymous with depth, strength, and philosophical gravitas, everything Jules Winfield could have been, but with a different moral compass. In retrospect, Fishburne's decision not only reflected his values but also carved out a unique lane for him in Hollywood. While Jackson's Jules became a pop culture staple, Fishburne remained true to his personal standards, proving that sometimes saying no can be as defining as saying yes. Harry Belafonte, 96 years old, 2023. Harry Belafonte wasn't just a star, he was a movement. Often remembered as the King of Calypso for hits like Deo, the Banana Boat song, Belafonte's artistic influence extended far beyond music. He was also a formidable actor and a deeply committed civil rights activist. But what many don't realize is that he once turned down a leading role in the film adaptation of Porgy and Bess, 1959, a bold decision that revealed just how seriously he took the intersection of race and representation. At a time when opportunities for black actors were extremely limited and often wrapped in harmful stereotypes, Porgy and Bess was seen by some in Hollywood as a prestigious project. Yet Belafonte saw something different. He believed the characters in the story, particularly the titular Porgy, reinforced demeaning tropes about African Americans. Rather than advance his career at the cost of dignity, he walked away. In fact, Belafonte was so disturbed by the racial caricatures that he declined the part despite pressure from the studio. His decision caused a stir, especially since the role ultimately went to his friend and frequent contemporary, Sidney Poitier, who would later admit in interviews that he regretted accepting the part. Belafonte's refusal wasn't an isolated gesture. It fit a lifelong pattern. A close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Belafonte used his celebrity platform to support the civil rights movement, help fund the Freedom Rides, and even organize the historic 1963 March on Washington. Throughout his life, he rejected projects and performances that he felt undermined black identity, choosing instead to use his influence to uplift his community. By turning down Porgy and Bess, Belafonte made it clear that not every role is worth taking, especially when it distorts a people's humanity. He sacrificed Hollywood acclaim to uphold his values, a move that defined his legacy more than any film could. When he passed away in 2023 at age 96, it wasn't just his music or acting that the world mourned, it was the moral compass he brought to every decision. His rejection of that role remains one of the earliest and clearest examples of a black star saying, "Not at the expense of my people." Will Smith, 56 years old. In the late 1990s, Will Smith was riding a wave of blockbuster success. After Independence Day, 1996, and Men in Black, 1997, he had become Hollywood's most bankable leading man. So when the Wachowskis approached him to play Neo in The Matrix, it seemed like a match made in sci-fi heaven. But Smith, to nearly everyone's surprise, turned it down. The decision has followed him ever since, and he owns it. In a 2019 YouTube video, Smith explained why he passed on what would become one of the most iconic roles in modern film history. At the time, he found the Wachowskis' pitch confusing. Their vision for Bullet Time, where Neo dodges bullets in slow motion, sounded too abstract and, frankly, strange. Smith didn't see how it would work on screen. Instead, he chose to star in Wild Wild West, 1999, a steampunk comedy that bombed with critics and audiences alike. Smith later admitted that had he taken the role, he might have messed up The Matrix by injecting too much humor into a story that thrived on grit and gravity. He even credited Keanu Reeves for bringing the right tone and discipline to the part, noting that Reeves' performance was perfect for the film's philosophical undertones and martial arts choreography. It wasn't a total loss for Smith, though. He continued to dominate box offices in the 2000s with films like Ali, I, Robot, and The Pursuit of Happiness. Still, the missed opportunity with The Matrix is one of Hollywood's most famous what-ifs. The movie went on to gross over $467 million globally and redefine the sci-fi genre. Smith's choice underscores a larger truth about show business. Sometimes even the biggest stars misread the moment. Yet what sets Smith apart is his willingness to own his misstep with humility and humor. He didn't try to rewrite history, he laughed along with it. And by doing so, he reminded us that even turning down a legendary role can be a valuable lesson in vision, timing, and self-awareness. Denzel Washington, 70 years old. By the mid-1990s, Denzel Washington had already established himself as a commanding force in American cinema. With 2 Academy Awards to his name and a reputation for choosing complex, layered characters, his decision-making was widely respected. Yet, even icons make career calls they later question, and turning down the lead role in David Fincher's 1995 thriller Say Seven became one such moment for Washington. The role he passed on was that of Detective David Mills, the young and impulsive cop played by Brad Pitt in the film. Say 7, which pairs the inexperienced Mills with Morgan Freeman's seasoned detective Somerset, is now considered one of the most chilling and masterfully crafted psychological thrillers in Hollywood history. It grossed over $327 million worldwide and became a cultural phenomenon, especially for its jaw-dropping twist ending. So why did Denzel say no? In a candid conversation with Jamie Foxx, Washington admitted that the film's dark tone and violent narrative initially repelled him. The script's disturbing themes, centered around a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins as his motive, felt too demonic and grotesque for his taste. Washington was hesitant to work with Fincher, who at the time was relatively unknown, having only directed Alien 3. The combination of a bleak plot and an unproven director made him wary. Only after seeing the finished film did Denzel realize what he'd missed. He expressed genuine admiration for the film's tension, storytelling, and Fincher's direction. Watching Pitt's gripping performance unfold, Washington recognized that he had underestimated the project's potential. Still, he didn't dwell on regret. Instead, he continued making powerful choices, from The Hurricane to Training Day, that would solidify his place as one of the most respected actors of his generation. Washington's decision to skip Say 7 is a stark reminder that even seasoned professionals can't always predict cinematic greatness. What makes his story compelling is his honesty about the miscalculation. He didn't blame others or hide the truth, he simply acknowledged that not every script speaks the same to everyone at first glance. In hindsight, while Say 7 might have added another dark gem to Denzel's resume, it didn't derail his path. If anything, it highlighted how his intuition, though occasionally off, has mostly guided him toward performances that define excellence. Angela Bassett, 66 years old. Angela Bassett is a name synonymous with elegance, intensity, and unshakable integrity. By the early 2000s, she had already dazzled critics with her Emmy-nominated turn as Rosa Parks and her unforgettable portrayal of Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It? So when she was offered the lead female role in Monsters Ball, 2001, many thought she'd accept and sweep awards season. But Bassett chose a different path. The role was that of Letitia Musgrove, a grieving widow who enters into an emotionally charged relationship with a racist prison guard played by Billy Bob Thornton. Bassett, after reading the script and reflecting on the character's journey, declined. Her reason? She felt that the role required her to portray a black woman in a way that she found deeply troubling, particularly due to the film's explicit sex scenes and the emotional vulnerability required without sufficient context or strength. In a 2002 interview, Bassett explained that she refused to play a character that, in her words, was just being degraded. She didn't object to complexity or pain, She had portrayed both before. What she objected to was the lack of redemptive narrative and emotional clarity for Letitia Bassett, who often championed stories that uplift or explore black women's resilience, felt that Monsters Ball crossed a line. The role eventually went to Halle Berry, who won the Academy Award for Best Actress, becoming the first black woman to achieve that milestone. Yet, Bassett has never expressed bitterness. Instead, she stood by her choice, saying that roles must speak to her spirit, not just her ambition. What's more, Bassett's career didn't falter because of that decision. In fact, she went on to star in Akeelah and the Bee, Black Panther, and 911, showing extraordinary range and commitment to impactful storytelling. Her refusal to take the easy road has made her a beacon for authenticity in an industry that often asks actors, especially black women, to compromise. In a landscape where roles for women of color remain limited, Bassett's principled decision serves as both a challenge and a call to elevate the kind of stories being told. She may have stepped away from an Oscar-winning part, but she never strayed from her mission, to honor the dignity of black womanhood on screen. Cuba Gooding Jr., 57 years old. Fresh off his Oscar win for Jerry Maguire in 1997, Cuba Gooding Jr. was riding high. Hollywood saw him as a rising star, and major studios rushed to cast him in their next big projects. One such opportunity came from none other than Steven Spielberg, who offered Gooding a part in his historical drama Amistad, a powerful story about a group of enslaved Africans who rebel aboard a ship and stand trial for their freedom. Shockingly, Gooding said no. Why would a newly crowned Academy Award winner walk away from a Spielberg film? In hindsight, the actor admitted that ego played a significant role. In interviews, he has confessed that after winning the Oscar, he became overly selective, waiting for the perfect leading role instead of continuing to build his craft. He thought the part in Amistad wasn't big enough for someone of his newfound stature. But as he later realized, it wasn't about the size of the role, it was about the opportunity to work with a master storyteller on a project with deep cultural resonance. Gooding would later reflect on this period as a career crossroads. He compared his situation to the pressure Christopher Reeve felt after Superman, that sense of being boxed into one image, trying to live up to a massive early success. As he turned down roles that didn't feel grand enough, his momentum began to slow. Other actors from Amistad, like Jimin Hunsu and Anthony Hopkins, earned critical acclaim and industry respect. Meanwhile, Gooding's post-Oscar projects became more uneven. Despite the misstep, he eventually found redemption through roles in films like Radio and The Butler, showing he could still tap into the depth and emotion that earned him his Oscar in the first place. But the rejection of Amistad remains one of the clearest examples of how timing and humility play vital roles in navigating a long-term career. What makes Gooding's story compelling is the self-awareness he gained later in life. He has never tried to shift the blame. Instead, he owns it. And in an industry that rarely allows second chances, his honesty and talent kept him in the game. Halle Berry, 58 years old. Halle Berry's screen presence has always commanded attention. A rare blend of strength, sensuality, and vulnerability helped her become the first black woman to win an Oscar for Best Actress. But before that historic moment, Berry made a surprising career move. She turned down the role of Annie Porter in the 1994 blockbuster Speed. At the time, Berry was a rising star. She had earned praise for performances in Boomerang and Queen, the story of an American family. When offered Speed, which eventually starred Sandra Bullock opposite Keanu Reeves, Berry declined. The reason? The original script simply didn't impress her. In her words, the bus never even left the parking lot. The early draft of the screenplay seemed stagnant and lacked the adrenaline-pumping action that would later define the film. Berry, like any discerning actor, made her decision based on the material she saw at the time. She couldn't predict how much the script would be rewritten or how it would evolve into a full-blown action classic. The final version of Speed became a box office sensation, earning over $350 million worldwide and turning Sandra Bullock into a household name. Despite missing out on the breakout action role of the decade, Berry didn't falter. She went on to star in Bulworth, X-Men, Die Another Day, and eventually, Monsters Ball, which brought her historic Oscar win in 2002. Still, Berry has reflected with humor and humility on passing over Speed. She's even joked in interviews that she was happy for Bullock but admits she didn't see the movie's potential at the time. Berry's story highlights the reality that scripts often change dramatically from first draft to final cut, and actors are forced to decide on a project before that transformation is visible. She trusted her instincts, which is part of what's guided her through a career filled with groundbreaking roles, box office wins, and award recognition. In hindsight, Speed was a missed opportunity, but it wasn't a defining loss. If anything, it demonstrated Berry's commitment to thoughtful storytelling. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing substance. And as her body of work shows, she caught it. Wesley Snipes, 62 years old. Wesley Snipes has always been known for his intensity, charisma, and unforgettable screen presence. From New Jack City to Blade, he brought a combination of martial arts mastery and dramatic gravitas that few actors could match. So when Fox was developing its hit series Empire, creator Lee Daniels had Snipes in mind for the lead role of Lucius Lyon, the ruthless music mogul at the center of the drama. But in a move that shocked many in the industry, Snipes turned the role down. At the time, Daniels was convinced that Snipes could bring both menace and elegance to the character. Lucius was written as a complicated, morally gray figure, an ex-drug dealer turned hip-hop titan, grappling with legacy and loyalty. Snipes, however, was focused on relaunching his film career after a period of legal and personal challenges. He had just committed to NBC's action thriller The Player and believed television, especially network drama, wasn't the right platform for his comeback. Meanwhile, actress Taraji P. Henson, cast as Lucius's ex-wife Cookie, pushed hard for Terrence Howard to be cast instead. She believed he had the emotional depth and chemistry needed for the role. Her insistence helped sway the producers, and eventually, Howard was offered the part. The rest, of course, is history. Empire became a cultural phenomenon, debuting in 2015 to record-breaking ratings. The show ran for 6 seasons and turned Howard's portrayal of Lucius into one of the most memorable TV performances of the decade. Snipes later addressed the decision without regret, saying that Howard was the right man for the job and expressing respect for the series' success. He also emphasized that his goal had been to return to feature films and action-oriented roles. And in fairness, he has remained active in the industry, later appearing in projects like Dolomite Is My Name and Coming to America. Turning down Empire wasn't about missing out, it was about staying the course. Snipes knew what he wanted from his career at that moment and made a choice that aligned with that vision. While he may not have become Lucius Lyon, he never stopped being Wesley Snipes, a trailblazer with a distinct path of his own. Muriel Smith, 62 years old, 1985. Muriel Smith may not be a household name to modern audiences, but her impact on American opera and racial equality was profound. Born in Harlem in 1923, Smith was a classically trained mezzo-soprano who shattered barriers in an era that offered few opportunities for black performers. She made history as the first black singer to lead a production at London's Royal Opera House in Covent Garden in 1957. But what many don't know is that she once declined a prominent role in the musical film Gigi, 1958, not because of career strategy, but because of principle. Gigi, directed by Vincente Minnelli and based on the French novella by Colette, went on to win 9 Academy Awards. It was a dazzling, opulent film about Parisian high society and coming-of-age romance. But to Muriel Smith, the role she was offered lacked dignity and reinforced demeaning stereotypes of women, especially women of color. At a time when Hollywood still largely marginalized or caricatured black characters, Smith refused to be part of a narrative that, in her view, romanticized exploitation. What's more, her decision was deeply influenced by the racial unrest unfolding in America. In 1958, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and Smith, though based in London at the time, felt a strong responsibility to represent her community with honor. She believed that every public appearance, from opera stages to film screens, could either uplift or degrade the image of black people. That belief guided her decision to say no. Instead of chasing stardom, Smith turned her talents toward work that fostered healing and understanding. She co-created The Crowning Experience, a stage production that aimed to bridge racial divides through music and storytelling. She also performed in interracial plays and community theater designed to promote reconciliation during times of cultural tension. Muriel Smith died in 1985 at the age of 62, but her legacy remains powerful. She was an artist who saw beyond applause, who recognized the long-term power of representation. Her decision to turn down Gigi wasn't a missed chance. It was a quiet act of resistance, and one that helped pave the way for artists who would later demand fuller, truer portrayals of black life in film and music. Monique, 57 years old. Monique, the Oscar-winning actress and comedian, is no stranger to controversy, but behind her larger-than-life presence is a performer who's repeatedly stood her ground in the face of industry politics. One of the most surprising, what could have been, moments in her career came in 2014, when she was considered for the role of Cookie Lyon in the hit Fox drama Empire. The role, which would go to Taraji P. Henson and define the series, was initially brought to Monique by none other than Lee Daniels himself. At the time, Monique was eager for a major comeback following her acclaimed performance in Precious, 2009, which earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. According to Monique, Daniels personally contacted her with interest in casting her as Cookie and even asked her to send in her TV rate for a screen test. Emails later shared by the actress confirmed that conversations about her involvement were indeed in motion. However, things took a strange turn. Daniels' writing partner Danny Strong and network executives eventually chose to move forward with Henson. Monique claims she was quietly dropped from consideration, without any explanation. The studio, she said, had concerns over her reputation for being difficult, a label she has fiercely contested. In her defense, she stated she was simply advocating for fair pay and proper recognition during the Precious Award campaign. Monique went public with her side of the story during a 2015 interview on Sway in the Morning, reading the email exchanges aloud and asking viewers to consider how often black women in Hollywood are penalized for speaking up. Her revelation sparked debate about power, perception, and double standards in the industry. While she didn't end up playing Cookie Lyon, a role that brought Henson a Golden Globe and 6 Emmy nominations, Monique's outspokenness brought a different kind of attention. She became a lightning rod for conversations about inequality in Hollywood, especially around how black women are treated when they challenge the system. In retrospect, Monique's loss of empire wasn't just about a role, it was about how narratives are controlled behind closed doors. And even though she wasn't cast, her willingness to speak truth to power left just as lasting an impression. Mekhi Phifer, 50 years old. In the early 2000s, Mekhi Phifer was making his mark in Hollywood, particularly through his role as Dr. Greg Pratt on NBC's ER. With his schedule packed and his focus squarely on television, Phifer wasn't immediately sold on a script for a gritty Detroit-based drama centered on a white rapper. That project, of course, would become 8 Mile, a film that catapulted Eminem into movie stardom and grossed over $242 million worldwide. But Phifer almost wasn't a part of it. Initially, when the offer to play Future, Eminem's best friend and hype man in the film, landed on his desk, Phifer didn't take it seriously. The timing wasn't ideal, America was still reeling from the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, and the idea of flying to Detroit for filming felt risky. He was also unsure about the premise. A hip-hop biopic starring a rap artist with no prior acting experience? It sounded uncertain at best. But everything changed when he actually read the full script. Phifer quickly realized 8 Mile had emotional depth, raw authenticity, and the potential to resonate far beyond music. He flew out to Detroit, met with Eminem and director Curtis Hanson, and agreed to the role, thankfully, just in time. His portrayal of Future, the loyal and grounded friend who pushes Jimmy Smith Jr., Eminem, toward greatness, became one of his most beloved performances. Phifer not only held his own alongside Eminem but added layers of heart and wisdom to the film's gritty narrative. The movie's impact was massive, winning an Oscar for Best Original Song with Lose Yourself, which even name-checks Phifer in the lyrics. To this day, Phifer reflects on 8 Mile with pride. It gave him the chance to work with a first-time actor who delivered a stunning performance and brought him into a project that became an essential part of early 2000s pop culture. He also credits the role for opening doors to different audiences and genres. Phifer's story is a reminder that great opportunities sometimes arrive in unexpected packaging. And while hesitation is natural, what matters most is recognizing a diamond before it disappears. Thankfully, Phifer did just that, and left his mark on a modern classic. John Boyega, 33 years old. John Boyega burst into global stardom as Finn in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, but his journey as an actor has always been guided by purpose over popularity. So when Marvel Studios reportedly approached him to play Prince T'Challa, son of the original Black Panther, in the wake of Chadwick Boseman's passing, Boyega's decision to decline wasn't about career strategy. It was about respect. Following Boseman's death in 2020, Marvel faced an immense challenge: how to honor a beloved actor while continuing the Black Panther legacy. One solution was to shift focus to a younger character, potentially Boseman's on-screen son, Prince T'Challa. Boyega was among the high-profile black actors approached for this sensitive role. But he respectfully said no. While Boyega never officially confirmed the offer, multiple credible reports surfaced that he had been in discussions. According to insiders, he turned it down due to a combination of timing, creative direction, and, most significantly, a feeling that stepping into Boseman's shoes so soon would undermine the emotional weight of the original Black Panther. Boyega, known for his vocal stance on racial injustice and representation in Hollywood, has always chosen roles with cultural gravity. From Detroit to Small Axe, his work often reflects real-world themes and emotional authenticity. Taking on a character built directly from the legacy of Chadwick Boseman would have placed enormous symbolic pressure on him, and risked alienating fans still grieving the original star. His decision wasn't an act of fear, but of reverence. Boyega recognized that the role of Chala was more than just a superhero, it was a cultural symbol. He reportedly felt that audiences needed more time to process Boseman's loss and that someone else, possibly an unknown actor, might be better suited to carry the torch forward without the burden of comparison. As Marvel continues to develop its next chapter, Boyega has continued on his own path, starring in powerful projects like They Cloned Tyrone and earning praise for his activism. His choice not to join the Black Panther franchise might surprise some, but it reflects the deep integrity behind his career choices. Sometimes the strongest statement an actor can make isn't in the roles they take, but in the ones they choose to leave behind. Sidney Poitier, 94 years old, 2022. Sidney Poitier stands as one of the most transformative figures in cinematic history. The first black man to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, he broke barriers in a segregated Hollywood. But even icons have moments of internal conflict, and one of Poitier's deepest regrets came from initially refusing, and then accepting, the role of Porgy in the 1959 film Porgy and Bess. When producers approached Poitier about starring alongside Dorothy Dandridge in the film adaptation of George Gershwin's folk opera, he hesitated. He believed the characters in Porgy and Bess reinforced troubling stereotypes of black Americans as impoverished, emotionally unstable, and morally compromised. Poitier, who had built his career on dignity and defiance, roles like A Raisin in the Sun and The Defiant Ones, felt the story lacked the empowerment and nuance he wanted to represent. But despite his objections, studio pressure and contractual obligations eventually swayed him. He reluctantly took the role, performing it with professionalism but without passion. In later interviews, particularly one with Oprah Winfrey, Poitier admitted it was the only film in his storied career that he wished he could erase. "I didn't like myself in that film," he said. "It went against everything I wanted to build as an image for my people." The film itself was a lavish production, praised for its visuals and musical grandeur. But it was also mired in controversy. Many civil rights groups at the time criticized it for romanticizing Southern black poverty and failing to challenge systemic racism. Poitier's instincts had been right all along, and the role he had tried to avoid became a cautionary tale about creative compromise. Despite this misstep, Poitier went on to lead Hollywood into new territory, with powerful performances in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Lilies of the Field, and In the Heat of the Night. His career became a blueprint for principled stardom, one where each role served a purpose beyond entertainment. His conflicted journey with Porgy and Bess wasn't a stain on his legacy. Instead, it was a rare moment of vulnerability that revealed just how seriously Poitier took his responsibility as a cultural ambassador. Even legends sometimes take roles they regret, but it's what they learn from them that defines who they are. Michael B. Jordan, 38 years old. Michael B. Jordan's career has been marked by powerful, emotionally grounded performances in films like Fruitvale Station, Creed, and Black Panther. But before he became a Marvel superhero and a box office staple, Jordan had the chance to take on another pivotal real-life role, playing Dr. Dre in the 2015 biopic Straight Outta Compton. The film, which chronicled the rise of hip-hop legends NWA, went on to gross over $200 million worldwide and received an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay. So why did Jordan pass on such a significant opportunity? The answer lies in unfortunate timing. When he was approached for the role, Jordan was already contractually committed to filming Fantastic Four, 2015, a reboot of the Marvel property that would ultimately become one of the most critically panned superhero films of the decade. Jordan later confirmed in interviews that he was excited by the Straight Outta Compton script and eager to work on a project that combined music, culture, and raw history. He had even begun early discussions about stepping into the role of the legendary producer and rapper. But due to the overlapping schedules and exclusivity requirements in his Fantastic Four contract, he had no choice but to walk away. The part of Dr. Dre eventually went to Corey Hawkins, whose performance was widely praised and helped launch his own successful career in television and film. While Straight Outta Compton soared, Fantastic Four faltered, both critically and financially, leaving Jordan in the awkward position of watching one of his missed opportunities turn into a phenomenon while the project he chose struggled. However, Jordan didn't let the setback define him. In a move that showcased his resilience, he rebounded with Creed later that same year, earning critical acclaim and opening the door to more leading man roles. By 2018, he had redefined villainy with his portrayal of Eric Killmonger in Black Panther, becoming one of Marvel's most complex and beloved antagonists. Jordan's experience is a reminder that Hollywood careers often hinge on timing as much as talent. Though missing Straight Outta Compton was a tough pill to swallow, he made the best of a difficult situation, and ultimately came out stronger, more focused, and even more determined to shape his own narrative. Lupita Nyong'o, 42 years old. Lupita Nyong'o, an actress known for both her elegance and intellectual depth, made international waves after winning an Academy Award for 12 Years a Slave. With subsequent powerhouse performances in Us, Black Panther, and Queen of Katwa, she established herself not only as a talented performer but as a thoughtful storyteller who values the meaning behind each role. That's why her decision to withdraw from The Woman King, a film she was initially cast in, revealed just how deeply she engages with the history behind the characters she plays. Nyong'o was originally set to portray an Agoji warrior in the Viola Davis-led historical epic. The film centers around the real-life all-female military unit from the Kingdom of Dahomey in West Africa. As a lead in such a rare narrative spotlighting black women in positions of strength and leadership, Nyong'o's involvement was highly anticipated. However, during her preparation, she traveled to Benin and filmed a personal documentary titled Warrior Women with Lupita Nyong'o, exploring the origins and legacy of the Agoji. What she uncovered shifted her perspective. While the film emphasized the heroism of the warriors, Nyong'o's research exposed a darker truth. The Agoji were also active participants in the transatlantic slave trade, capturing and selling fellow Africans to European powers. The complex legacy of the group, both liberators and oppressors, was difficult to reconcile. Shortly after this exploration, Nyong'o quietly exited the project. Though she did not publicly cite specific reasons, her decision came immediately after completing her documentary. It was widely interpreted as a moral and creative response to the uncomfortable realities she had uncovered. Thuso Mbedu and Lashana Lynch eventually joined the cast in her absence. Nyong'o's withdrawal was not a rejection of the film's importance but a statement about the need for honest storytelling. In an era when representation matters more than ever, she emphasized the necessity of historical accuracy, especially when dealing with ancestral legacies. Her action sparked important discussions around how Black history is portrayed in entertainment and how uncomfortable truths should be acknowledged, not whitewashed. Her decision to walk away from The Woman King was an act of integrity, not protest. It reflected a core belief that actors, especially those representing underrepresented communities, have a responsibility to ensure the stories they help tell are as truthful as they are powerful. Amandla Stenberg, 26 years old. Amandla Stenberg has always defied expectations. From a breakout role as Rue in The Hunger Games to her acclaimed performance in The Hate U Give, Stenberg has consistently chosen roles that challenge societal norms and elevate underrepresented voices. But one of the most remarkable decisions of her career came when she voluntarily walked away from a role in Marvel's Black Panther, a choice few actors would dare to make. Stenberg was in serious contention to play Shuri, the brilliant younger sister of T'Challa and tech genius of Wakanda. The part eventually went to Letitia Wright, who brought humor and heart to the fan-favorite character. But it could have been Stenberg, until she made the conscious decision to step aside. In a revealing interview with CBC, Stenberg explained that although she was excited about the opportunity, she couldn't ignore one critical factor: colorism. As a biracial woman with light skin, she felt that her inclusion in a film celebrating dark-skinned African culture and aesthetics would dilute the film's visual and symbolic integrity. Wakanda, as envisioned by director Ryan Coogler, was a tribute to African heritage, and Stenberg believed it was important for the cast to reflect that with authenticity. "I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to play that role," she said. "It would have taken up space that should be reserved for darker-skinned actors." Her statement echoed a wider conversation in Hollywood about who gets to represent blackness on screen and how nuanced identities within the Black diaspora are handled. By stepping away, Stenberg elevated the importance of self-awareness and solidarity over personal gain. The decision didn't slow her career. Instead, it reaffirmed her as a thought leader and advocate for representation. She went on to headline the Eddie, Everything, Everything, and Bodies, 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 all while continuing her activism surrounding LGBTQ+ issues, race, and mental health. Stenberg's refusal of Black Panther wasn't just a casting choice, it was a cultural moment. In an industry where roles like Shuri are highly coveted, she prioritized the collective over the individual. That kind of sacrifice is rare and speaks volumes about her character. She didn't just turn down a blockbuster, she turned up the volume on a conversation Hollywood still needs to have. Diana Ross, 81 years old. Diana Ross is an undisputed icon, a musical legend who successfully crossed over into film with standout performances in Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany. By the early 1980s, she had already earned an Oscar nomination and was widely respected as a pioneering Black actress. So, when Steven Spielberg began casting for The Color Purple, 1985, Ross was one of the top names considered for the role of Shug Avery, the sultry jazz singer with a complicated past. But in a decision that surprised many, Ross opted not to take the part. Based on Alice Walker's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Color Purple follows Celie, a young black woman in early 20th century Georgia, as she finds her voice amidst a life of trauma and oppression. The film features themes of abuse, religion, and same-sex love, topics that were considered controversial at the time. While Ross never spoke publicly in depth about her reasons for turning down the role, industry insiders have speculated that her decision stemmed from discomfort with the story's portrayal of Shug's relationship with Celie, as well as the film's bold confrontation of taboo issues. The role eventually went to Margaret Avery, who delivered a powerful and vulnerable performance, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. The film itself was a cultural landmark, garnering 11 Oscar nominations, though famously winning none. It launched the film careers of Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey, both of whom credited the film for opening doors for black actresses in Hollywood. For Ross, the decision didn't derail her legacy. If anything, it added another layer to the mystique of a star who has always carefully curated her image. While she may have passed on a role that became cinematic history, Ross's overall impact on entertainment remains untouchable. She helped redefine what was possible for black women in music and film during the 20th century. Sometimes, saying no doesn't mean walking away from greatness, it means knowing where your voice fits best. And for Diana Ross, that instinct has guided her through a career that continues to inspire generations. Beyoncé, 43 years old. Beyoncé Knowles Carter is more than a global superstar, she's a cultural force. With a career that spans music, film, and fashion, she has long maintained control over her brand and how she's portrayed on screen. That's why it surprised some fans when it was revealed that Beyoncé had turned down a role in Disney's 2017 live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast. But her reason was crystal clear: the role simply didn't reflect her stature or creative goals. Director Bill Condon, who previously worked with Beyoncé on Dreamgirls, approached her for the role of Plumette, the flirty, feathered French maid turned feather duster. While the character adds charm and elegance to the Enchanted Castles ensemble, it's a minor role, largely relegated to side scenes and musical flourishes. Despite Condon's enthusiasm and their previous collaboration, Beyoncé politely declined. According to reports, Beyoncé felt the role wasn't substantive enough. At that point in her career, she was focusing on projects that offered deeper storytelling, character development, and cultural significance, goals that a decorative, comedic supporting role didn't fulfill. It wasn't about money, fame, or visibility, it was about alignment with purpose. The role eventually went to Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who delivered a delightful performance. Meanwhile, the film became a massive success, grossing over $1.2 billion globally and reaffirming Disney's dominance in live-action remakes. Beyoncé, on the other hand, was preparing for other transformative projects, like her groundbreaking visual album Lemonade and the voice role of Nala in The Lion King, 2019, which had far more narrative weight. Turning down Beauty and the Beast was a strategic choice that aligned with Beyoncé's artistic evolution. It wasn't about ego, it was about vision. She has long expressed her desire to use her platform to tell stories that empower and uplift, particularly those rooted in Black identity and excellence. A feather duster simply didn't fit that mission. In hindsight, Beyoncé's decision wasn't a snub, it was a recalibration. And in true Queen Bey fashion, she followed it with bigger, bolder moves that once again showed the world she only takes roles worthy of her voice. Kevin Hart, 45 years old. Kevin Hart is one of the most successful comedians of his generation, known for box office hits like Ride Along, Think Like a Man, and Jumanji. But early in his acting career, he was offered a role in the 2008 satire Tropic Thunder, a film that poked fun at Hollywood through outrageous characters and exaggerated performances. Hart was tapped to play Al Pacino, a fictional rapper-turned-actor with a flamboyant personality. It could have been his breakout role, yet he turned it down. Why? Hart later revealed in interviews, including The Breakfast Club, that he felt uncomfortable with how the character was written. He described the role as too flagrant, suggesting it played too heavily on stereotypes that he wasn't ready, or willing, to embody. At that time, Hart was still defining his image in the industry and didn't feel confident portraying a character that might cause backlash or misinterpretation. Another key factor was Hart's concern about how audiences, especially within the Black and LGBTQ+ communities, would receive the performance. He was aware that comedy could quickly become controversy if it lacked sensitivity, and he admitted that he didn't yet have the maturity or range to deliver the role in a way that honored everyone. "I couldn't dive into that character the way they wanted me to," he confessed. The role of Al Pacino eventually went to Brandon T. Jackson, whose performance was well received and added to the film's overall success. Tropic Thunder grossed over $195 million worldwide and became a cult comedy favorite. Still, Hart doesn't express regret, only reflection. He stated that the decision was necessary for where he was mentally and professionally at the time. Rather than force himself into a role that didn't align with his instincts, Hart focused on building a brand that was funny, relatable, and broadly appealing. That choice paid off. Today, he's one of the highest-grossing stand-up comedians in the world and a respected businessman with his own media empire. Kevin Hart's choice to step away from Tropic Thunder was less about fear and more about timing. It's a testament to the power of knowing your lane, and waiting for the right moment to expand it. Some roles make legends, others are legendary for the ones who turn them down. From Will Smith passing on The Matrix to Angela Bassett refusing Monsters Ball, these bold decisions reveal just how complex Hollywood choices can be. On Legends of Black Excellence, we honor not just the roles our icons played, but the ones they walked away from. Were these missed opportunities, or masterstrokes of integrity? You decide. Clapperboard which actor made the smartest move, and who made the biggest mistake? Backhand index pointing down, drop your take in the comments, we're ready for the debate.